This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 315. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to tell folks about the big show today?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, Brandon Phillips from the CoreOS project, in fact, he's the CTO of CoreOS, will join us to talk about a project that promises to give all of us Google-scale infrastructure.
Nice.
Yeah, it's actually an awesome project, and they have some really cool details that we're going to dig into during that interview. And, of course, in the news segment, we'll talk about TrueCrypt going away. It's our first look at Linux Mint 17 and a few other things like Linus reading tweets. Did you see that?
Oh, that was funny.
Yeah, in the feedback segment, we're going to follow up on our year with Arch, which comes at an interesting time for both of us right now. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, I've got an announcement about a brand new show coming to Jupiter Broadcasting starting Monday.
Yes.
And we'll give you the details on that. But first, Matt.
Yes.
It is our picks.
Our picks.
So this Runs Linux is like no other Runs Linux we've ever featured on the show. Not only is it incredibly technically cool, but
which is important.
Who sent it in is also important. So let me start.
Okay.
Jimmy, the research humanoid robot, runs Linux. That's right. And
Wow.
here, I'll
How do
play.
I get one?
Well, I know, right? Well, I'll show him to you, and then you tell me if you still want him. I mean, maybe he could be. Well, I don't know. Maybe you might be a little creeped out because he's almost in that uncanny zone.
Oh, wow.
So this is a video from the creators of Jimmy.
Jimmy's internal frame is built from custom 5052 aircraft aluminum brackets.
Wow.
Now, all of the 3D models for those brackets, his internal frame, as well as all of the external 3D shelling that we have on it, completely open source and available for download. So when you pick up this project to develop on, you get a ready-to-run robot with a considerable feature set, but you also have all the information available to you to make any sort of modifications or changes, whether they be aesthetic or structural, right there and ready to go. Jimmy's operating system runs Linux. You can run a full Ubuntu desktop on it, as well as open embedded flavors if you need to squeeze every bit of horsepower out of it. All the software is based upon the Darwin OP framework and is completely open source, available as well off of our GitHub repositories.
Yeah, he said you could run full desktop Linux on that if you want.
Well, he's an XFCE robot, clearly.
So let me tell you about the specs of this thing.
All right.
Are you ready for this?
All right.
It's powered by an Intel NUC. Surprise, surprise.
Oh,
a D54-2550WYK. It has an i5-4250 processor. It's a Haswell. 4 gigabytes of RAM, but you can go up to 16 with this thing. A 32 gigabyte SSD for internal storage. It's got Wi-Fi AC. It's got 4 USB 3 ports, and of course 2 USB 2.0 ports, HDMI and display port out, gigabit Ethernet. The robot also has a SATA port and up to 8 channels of audio.
Can you imagine how awesome he would be at parties and conventions? It's like, oh, hey, bring the Wi-Fi access over here.
So, yeah, it ships by default with Ubuntu 14.04 LTS. There's also like there's like it's Project Pocky or something. It's a distribution for it's an open embedded Linux distribution for custom robots that has like a robot abstraction layer.
Wow.
This thing is pretty neat looking. In this video that we have linked in the show notes, they show it kind of moving around. They have. Yeah, like here's a video of it like being a person, right? Let's see, let's go right to the spot where it kind of is like a person here. Let me play.
So that you can create cross-platform applications to interact with the robot.
Right.
Look at that.
The goal is to spend less time building a robot and more time giving it life, giving it personality, and not having to work at the lower levels. It's a platform that's out there for higher level developers to do higher level developing. So Jimmy's just the start. Keep an eye on this space for a lot more. And like we said, we're going to come out with a smaller robot that's at a much more comfortable price point, probably about an eighth to a tenth of the cost.
So this one, I think, I'm not sure, but I think this one might be $16,000.
Oh, wow.
I've seen price ranges from $16,000 to $1,000. I don't know which ones are right. This is an Intel project to kind of show what you can do with Intel processors in the robot space.
If you could get me, like, if I could rattle can him Silver, call him Twiggy, and get him to breakdance to Electric Boogaloo, I would easily spend $10K on this guy.
I think you can.
I would be freaking awesome.
I think you can do those things, Matt, and I think you should do those things. I'm ready for this. Like this guy, like I don't want to make him like a little worker all the time. I mean, he can have his chill time, but I can look at the robots in the background they got there too.
Yeah, he's got some.
These guys are all about
shelf stuff there.
Yeah,
too.
these guys are all about the robots. So this is pretty cool. So the whole idea is it's sort of like you buy a computer and they've already done the hard part for you, and now you just write the applications for it.
Boy.
Like the Destroy All Humans applications.
Right, yeah, exactly. Have a Chucky mode. I mean, that could be fun.
Yeah, you got to be careful a little bit. I mean, he looks like he's got that kind of expression on his face where he could be super evil or super friendly.
And you like wake up, he's leaning over you. Let's play with Daddy's gun. Where's Mommy's jewelry? You don't know.
Yeah. It's time to wake up, Chris.
Strangles are like little hugs for your neck. I mean, you don't know. I mean,
my cron job says it's time for you to get up. Get up now. So anyways, that's Jimmy, the research robot, and he's powered by a NUC running Linux.
Wow.
Of course.
If I'm the guy selling NUC, I'd be using that as my poster child for why you want.
I know.
Look what you can do with it.
I think it is an Intel project, and the NUC is also an Intel project. Yes. So I think that it's crazy. Blowing my mind. It is something that's become apparent, though, here on the Big Show is when the robot apocalypse does come, Linux will be playing a substantial role in that. I mean, every robot we've shown, it's like, yep, that's the one that's going to take over the world.
So I think the only way you're going to defend yourself is to actually have your own army to, kind of shield yourself off a little bit.
Thank goodness they're building that robot platform. Maybe that'll be the platform for our future robot army.
Little Arch robots against Ubuntu robots.
I could see it. Yeah, I could see it. And, the Arch ones would probably get new tactical skills faster because they would just continually get the new updates, whereas the Ubuntu robots, you'd have to wait every 6 months to get new tactics.
Like, dead PPA, dead PPA. Yeah, could be a real problem.
All right, Matt, before we go any further, I want to thank our sponsor this week, and that is DigitalOcean. Hey, do you know what DigitalOcean is? Well, buckle up, because I'll tell you, DigitalOcean is simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Matt, I've told you before that we've had people in the Linux Action Show audience get going in 37 seconds.
Ridiculous time period. Yeah.
I got a 43 seconds on their Android phone the other day.
Whoa.
That's how awesome the DigitalOcean control panel is. Their interface is simple. Their control panel is intuitive, and they have an API where you can replicate it on a larger scale. And here's what you get for only $5. 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, a blazing fast CPU, and 1 terabyte of transfer. And all of that is hooked up to some tier 1 bandwidth in some of the best hardware providers all over the world. DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. So what you're going to get is a system for an incredible value with an amazing performance that lets you very straightforwardly utilize KVM virtual machines. DigitalOcean is running on top of a Linux infrastructure. They invested early on in Linux. They invested very early on in KVM, and they paired that up with SSDs. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a pretty logical pairing. But the secret sauce for DigitalOcean is this amazing control panel where you can back up systems, create templates of systems, redeploy all over the world, expand systems, and also they also offer hourly charging for testing those systems.
That's the sweet spot right there.
It's
awesome.
Amazing. Developers love DigitalOcean. Linux users love DigitalOcean. And the best part is I've got a retro promo code. Now, I don't know how long this is going to work, so you better jump on this right now because I got a secret for you, Matt. This is the month of June. Did you know that?
It is June. It is June.
Unfortunately, it is June 1st today. But here's the thing. I've got a retro promo code for you. Use the promo code LASTMAY when you check out, and you can be one of the last people to squeeze in on the May discount where you get a $10 credit, so you can try out DigitalOcean for 2 months for free. Now, will there be a June promo? Of course. But you could be one of the hipsters. You could be a DigitalOcean hipster that used last May in June. So go over to DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code LASTMAY. Get a $10 credit. Try out one of these Droplet for 2 months. I mean, seriously, do it to teach yourself something. Do it to replace a service. Do it to just experience what it's like to own your own cloud server with root access, with incredible performance. DigitalOcean.com. And a huge thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show, for being so damn cool.
No kidding.
Retro promo code LASTMAY when you check out over at DigitalOcean.com.
Good stuff.
Okay.
All right.
We're going to talk a little bit more about the whole TrueCrypt thing that went down this week later in the news segment. And I don't normally re-feature a desktop pick.
Oh, yeah?
But back in, Season 27, Episode 2 of the Linux Action Show, we picked GNOME InkFS Manager as our desktop app pick.
I remember that.
And this is a really great tool, and there's similar ones for KDE. It also works on KDE because it's really working at the file system level. It's not really so much about the desktop environment. So GNOME Ink FS Manager, and it's available in most distributions repos, and it sort of gives you that TrueCrypt-like volume functionality. Now, I want to say, there are a lot of ways to skin this particular carrot, and we're going to go more into depth on different TrueCrypt replacements in a future episode of the Linux Action Show. But I wanted to give you right now sort of a straightforward, almost one-to-one functionality replacement for TrueCrypt, since you should be no longer using TrueCrypt, as much of a pain in the butt that is. So check out GNOME Ink FS, and here, Matt, I'll give you. You ready for a little demo of it here, Matt?
Let's go to it. Ooh,
I'll switch. That's me switching over to my other desktop. Hear that?
Boy.
Watch. Listen. Yeah, that's cool,
Make it
right?
so, number one.
Yeah. So here it is, GNOME Ink FS Manager, and you can see you can go in and create. It's really easy to create an encrypted private volume. You go and set up where you want it to be at. I created mine in /home/ChrisFs, and I made an InkFS folder, because I like to be super obvious. And then I made a .private folder.
Nice.
And you can see it listed out right here in the GNOME Manager. And if I go into InkFS folder right now, it's empty.
Okay.
Right? But if I go over here and I say, hey, dog, mount, and then I put in my really crazy secure password, because this is,
It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 or something.
Don't do that. No, it's pretty good. The longer it is, the better. I use a sentence is what I use.
Right. Oh, that's actually much more secure than my 1, 2, 3, 4. So.
Yeah, well, probably.
Yeah.
So then you see when I did that, the private folder showed up. And now this volume is mounted. In fact, it even shows up as a device here in my file manager off on the left over here. So here is now the contents that I had in this encrypted folder.
So now it's appearing.
So I've got so let's say we wanted to go in secret podcast plans, taxes clients, hair gel formula.
Top secret stuff there.
Yeah, exactly. So now you know the secret. If you got access to this folder, you know the secret to the hair right there. Oh, I guess I have maximized sound effects too. Let's see, do I have minimized sound effects? No. That's a bummer.
That's okay. That's okay. You got the hair gel formula.
Yeah, there you go. And so when I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm all done, and I don't even have this set to boot to mount at boot. I mount it when I need it, and I go in here and I uncheck that box, and then it goes away.
Oh, so it's all very dynamic. I like
very
that.
easy. It shows up as a mounted file system, so it shows up right in the file manager. So it makes like when you're in the open save dialog boxes, it's right there on the left. You can pick it, save your files there, and then
very
close.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways to do encryption, but GNOME Ink FS Manager, you will have to have InkFS support, but that's probably just a package away for your distribution.
Right.
It's in the AUR.
Like it's a straightforward, GUI way to get it done without a lot of.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways. So we'll kind of do a roundup. In fact, in the show notes, hello there, I have linked a thread where people are going through their favorite TrueCrypt replacement. And there's a lot of good suggestions in there, and some very obvious suggestions in there too. But I think keep an eye out. Quit using TrueCrypt today, and if you're in a hard spot, use GNOME Ink FS Manager. It's a really straightforward way to encryption FS, and I like it a lot, and I've made it a pick in the past about a year ago, so I'm bringing it back up just this week only because I want you guys to know about it, because you need to get off the TrueCrypt.
That's right.
That's the way it is.
It's a good place to go if you don't know where else to go.
We'll talk more about TrueCrypt in the news segment, so stay tuned for that, but I've got our weekly spotlight.
Yeesh.
I haven't done something on the web for a while, and that's like a mark on me. Bad on me, because I wanted to make sure that we didn't just spotlight desktop applications or just distributions. I want to give love to lots of open source projects. And you know me, Matt. I got to me a love-hate relationship with Google Docs.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's super great for podcast collaboration, working on show notes and stuff. I think a lot of podcasters use Google Docs because you can literally be updating the notes live during the show, and the other person sees the changes.
Exactly.
And you can have, like right now in the Linux Action Show doc, one of our producers is in the doc right now, and he's on the East Coast, right? So it's very.
Very dynamic, and I mean, in fact, the price is right. It's free.
Yeah,
there's kind of a thing.
That's
it's
true.
Stable. It works.
Yeah,
you know how.
Everybody's got it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to self-host it.
And I've always been like, if I was going to replace Google Docs, the whole real-time collaboration functionality is, feature number one required, and that really limits the list of what actually could replace Google Docs that doesn't have another, whole set of downsides to it. Well, Mozilla wants to fix that with Together.js. It's they host it, although I believe you could self-host it too.
Right.
And
I like the fact they host it.
Yeah, it's an open source JavaScript library by Mozilla that adds collaboration features and tools to any website. By adding Together.js to your site, users can help each other on a website. So you have to embed a quick little snippet of code on your website. But once you do that, you can do shared browsing sessions. So we literally are like, if I scroll the page, you see that. If I draw something on the screen, you see that. There's chats, there's transfers, there's real-time collaboration.
Wow.
It's really neat. And the whole idea is it kind of makes any website have some Google Docs functionalities. On top of that, they've got like a WordPress plugin, so you can just drop it in, and then you can have like 2 people working on a WordPress post at the same time.
I see the teaching options in this just being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Really.
So this is Together.js. Yeah, that could be huge, right? You get text chat, co-browsing, real-time content sync. You get focus, so I can say, hey, focus right here, and it does using WebRTC audio chat. So you can actually, that's something Google Docs doesn't do, and you think they would with Hangouts and everything. And this is the best part. Right here, this is the code you have to put on these 2 simple little lines is all you have to put on your website.
Just like
you put that in the HTML
head.
code. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And then you have Together.js. How cool is that?
Absolutely. Wow.
It's the new World Wide Web, Matt. It ain't your grandpa's World Wide Web, even though your grandpa would be us since we're that old. But, it ain't our younger self World Wide Web.
So now, being it's JavaScript, being that there's a lot of this kind of stuff, can anyone like see the code in the source and say, oh, hey, I want to see what you guys are doing?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Mozilla's made it all open source. They have it right up here on the GitHub. And they have also some really cool example sites. And
so going a step further, it's like, so say 2 people are doing this, they're collaborating. A third person says, oh, hey, a website. They go to the source, they see the script. They then, is there any security concerns there?
I don't know. I'm sure there probably is something eventually.
But it doesn't sound like it would be a problem. It sounds like it would actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends, just where you want to do it, and you got to make sure that you stay up to date. And the nice thing is, since they host some of the server-side code, as long as they keep revving it on their side, you automatically get the latest version.
Oh, okay.
So security fixes are not really your hassle.
Cool.
Yeah, or you could always pull it down from their GitHub and deploy it on your own server. Don't need them to host it.
There you go.
So that's pretty neat. Together.js, it's a way for open source to add collaboration to any website. You don't need Google Docs.
I like
Together.js. And the Mozilla project's like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make this available for everybody.
Wow.
That's what I like about the Mozilla guys.
That's so cool.
All right, Matt.
They're cool.
Let's do the news.
It's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Matt, go to last.ting.com. Why? Because Ting is mobile that makes sense.
Yeesh.
Ting is my mobile service provider, and Matt's mobile service provider, Boomsies.
That's right.
Both love our phones, and I'll tell you why. Ting is no contracts, no early termination fees, and you only pay for what you use.
Right.
Boom! Flat $6 a month, and just your usage on top of that is absolutely crazy. Last.ting.com is where to go, too, because it'll take $25 off your first device or $25 off your first month of service. And Ting is not just about the great value, too.
No, not at all.
They have excellent customer service at 1-855-TING-FTW. If you call them between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on standard business days, a real person answers the phone. They have a no-hold customer service.
Love that.
They also have an amazing and powerful online control panel, which is now well over a year into my Ting usage, about a year and a half, I think, actually. This is probably the feature that keeps me the happiest customer ever, is this dashboard. It's just so awesome, so powerful, but yet so straightforward. And now that I have multiple lines on my account too, it's really, really, really easy to manage the different phones, and it's the value there. Just on top of that is so incredible. And I just noticed, not only does Ting have a bunch of great phones, but one of the new phones they just added, you can get the HTC One M8 when you go to last.ting.com, $587. That's off contract. You own that phone outright. That is yours. But they also have some other incredible deals, like the perfectly great HTC One M7, last year's model, which is still, I think, one of the best smartphones ever made. You can get it refurbished for $380 on Ting, off contract. That's 4G LTE, latest Android, incredible speakers on the HTC One for $380 on Ting, and then you're only paying $6 flat per month plus your usage. That's an amazing deal. That's an incredible. I cannot believe that price. I cannot believe, for owning a phone outright, the HTC One, that is incredible on the Ting network. Man, that's a value. But they also have, this is like the value weekend on Ting.
Right.
The Sierra 4G LTE Tri-LTE hotspot. $74. Then it's a $74 tri-band LTE hotspot where it's just $6 a month. So if you end up not traveling for a couple of weeks, you're not worried about paying into this massive data contract that you're not. Oh, and no contract. There's no contract.
No.
It's Ting. Last.ting.com. Go check it out. And Matt.
Yes.
Since I'm no longer doing the app picks anymore, every now and then I like to go over to Kyra and see what she's got for us. Should we see what Kyra's app pick of the week is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm Kyra, and this is Ting's App of the Week. Tiny flashlight plus LED is the most convenient way to turn your phone into a powerful flashlight. The blue power button is the app's focal point and turns on the flash on the back of your device. The neon bar above displays your current battery life. Tiny flashlight lets you turn off your flash in 2 different ways: natively in the app, or by tapping the flashlight icon in your notification bar.
Oh,
I like
Tap
that.
the white circle in the top right to access more features. Planning to go to a rave or get lost at sea? Then the strobe light and Morse code flash modes will come in handy.
all right, Kyra.
Tiny flashlight also includes significantly less useful screen display lights.
Oh, cool.
Like a warning light, color light, light bulb, and screen light. The settings menu has some useful toggles if you're interested in changing your default light source or enabling sounds, along with specific settings for your LED and screen light.
That's a great app.
One nifty feature is the Shake On lock screen, which allows you to quickly turn on the flashlight by shaking the device.
From the lock screen?
Tiny flashlight plus LED is available for free on Google Play. You can pick up this super simple Android app now. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to Ting.
Last.ting.com, and also check them out on Twitter. They are TingFTW, and of course on their YouTube channel as well, where they've got not just their app picks, but all kinds of videos. They were giving away some devices earlier, and they were doing also a Nexus 5 versus iPhone 5 battle on Google Hangouts. And you notice Kyra's using the Nexus 5. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I wonder if you can get glow sticks on that.
I think it turns
a binky.
I think it turns into a glow stick. Did you see that? That's
Binky
got all
case,
kinds of
glow
cool
sticks,
colors.
yeah.
Last.ting.com, and a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Cool.
Okay, so Wednesday was crazy this week.
Yeah.
As I was prepping Unfilter, the news broke that TrueCrypt was shutting down. And at first, we didn't know if this was a hoax or a hack because
It sounded iffy.
they recommended BitLocker. An open source project recommending BitLocker? That, to me, immediately set off some red flags. And also recommending across the board built-in operating system encryption is not a one-to-one replacement for TrueCrypt, because one of TrueCrypt's biggest features is these encrypted volumes that you could move across operating systems. Right. So I, as a Linux user, could encrypt files and know that when I send them off to a Windows user, they're going to be able to open them.
Exactly. There was no hidden surprises of,
Right.
I can't get this open. Anything.
Yeah,
crap.
And TrueCrypt also has gotten a lot of limelight recently because Glenn Greenwald and Edward Snowden have been talking about how they've been using TrueCrypt to store documents related to the NSA leaks and communicate back and forth. So TrueCrypt's name has been getting dropped in the press a lot more than we've ever seen before.
Way more.
So then to have it all of a sudden out of nowhere, have the website be redirected to a SourceForge page that had been set up, recommending people switch to BitLocker, my mind was blown.
It just seemed off, and the fact that it is in fact something we need to pay attention to.
Now, since then, it looks like we've gotten some communication from the developers. Then the developers are sort of a mysterious group, although there appears to be a handful of them. Mm-hmm. And for all intents and purposes, it does seem legitimately like they were just kind of burned out. And there is a couple other factors going on right now. I mentioned a lot of media attention around TrueCrypt. There's also an open audit going on right now for TrueCrypt, which perhaps could be pressuring these guys. And then last but not least, Matt, did you hear that they were blaming the shutdown of XP? They said that, since XP is shutting down and you can't do full volume encryption on the newer versions of Windows, we're out. Do you think that was odd?
I think it goes back to what you were saying on, between, just being burnout and dealing with the people constantly haranguing them from the audit, also from the press. Yeah. Can you imagine minding your own business, trying to do your job,
right?
And you've got the press hounding
and you're trying to stay anonymous.
Audit stuff going on, in addition to what other, stuff you have going on in your life, and being anonymous at the same time. I mean, the press and anonymous don't generally go together. Sure, right. It's like a weird Watergate kind of deal. But, outside of that, it really doesn't work. So, yeah, I could see that being a real thing. I honestly get it. I do.
Yeah. And some people think maybe there was some sort of pushback from the government. I mean, who knows? We don't really know. But what we do know is that important open source never truly dies. Yeah. And that's what TrueCrypt.ch is setting off. TrueCrypt.ch says, TrueCrypt must never die. This is the gathering place of all up-to-date information. If TrueCrypt.org is really dead, we will try to organize a future. Their first priority is to make the product available again. That makes sense.
I'm looking at the domain name. I'm thinking, oh boy, it's like, okay, well,
I think it's in Switzerland or something.
Okay,
like, yeah.
it just sends a kind of a mixed message.
I know.
But the message is sound.
It is a little like sets off a red flag. I know.
But it's totally sound.
Second priority is finding interested and capable persons volunteering to help. So this is how early they are in this phase. Additionally, we will wait for the results of the Open Crypto audit. And third priority, fork the project to solve security threats. Now, the developers have said they don't think it's a good. Developers of TrueCrypt.
Yeah.
They said they don't think it's a good idea to fork the code. In fact, they think that people should start over from scratch because you would require such a level of familiarity with TrueCrypt to understand what it's fully doing that anybody else picking it up, this project's over 10 years old, right? It's a big beast.
Now, here's a hidden message here, and a lot of people are going to put on their tinfoil hats on this one, and I'm looking at it factually from recent events in gag orders and other people that have been in gag order situations. They could very potentially have been approached by a government agency. They could have actually had a gag order put on them, and they can't tell folks,
maybe
very specific.
I mean,
things.
it is possible since it's been in the news a lot.
So they very possibly could be going, look, there's a legitimate reason why we're telling you to go another direction. Maybe we should be listening to that. It's just something to consider.
Interestingly enough, because they've linked to the old TrueCrypt binaries. Oh, that was the other thing, is the developers re-sign the binaries and put a note in there telling people to stop using it, and it only lets them decrypt. So the version before they made that change has seen over 4,000 downloads in just 24 hours since they put up this TrueCrypt.ch page. So that seems to be a strong indication that there's still a lot of demand for TrueCrypt. Also, thankfully, Gentoo and Arch froze their packages, at least the last time I checked, so they didn't get the new version that's been crippled. They still have the old good version in the repos. I was a little worried about the daily distros, the rolling distros, maybe pulling in the bad version.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like the TrueCrypt project, one of the best open source encryption projects around, has shut down at this point. So check out the links in the show notes. I've got I've got links to the rolling distributions repos, so you can check to make sure they haven't gotten the bogus version of TrueCrypt.
Right.
And stay tuned for future coverage where we'll be talking about your options on Linux. And if you want a really good technical analysis and a rundown of a lot of the different theories around TrueCrypt, Alan and I kicked it around on this week's TechSnap. Check out TechSnap 164, Tales from the TrueCrypt.
I love that. And if you can actually get the creeper to do the presentation, that would be even better.
This is a 2-hour TechSnap.
Wow.
It's a
real great breakdown of exactly what's going on.
The chat room says that GitHub has 48 forks on GitHub right now.
Yeah, the don't fork it thing kind of fell on deaf ears, I think.
He mentions, too, that some of these projects might start utilizing Bounty Source to sort of close the gap on TrueCrypt development, and that would be an interesting use of Bounty Source.
You could fork it as long as there's audits in place early and ongoing. Sure, go for it.
Yeah, and thankfully, the Open Audit project said, even though the project is shut down, we're going to continue to do our audit and let you guys know what we find, because the reality is millions maybe still have TrueCrypt deployed, and we'll continue to use it for years and years and years. And it literally could be millions, but it's probably hundreds of thousands at least.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an insane number if you think about it. Something else insane. Linux Mint version 17 is out both for the Mate desktop and Cinnamon. Now remember, the key thing about this release of Linux Mint, it has support until 2019. So this is going to be this is a serious contender for new Linux users who want to switch to something that works out of the box. It's straightforward for them to manage. And they don't want to have to reload in a year or two, right? They want to be able to go till 2019 or longer. I mean, Linux Mint is now a serious contender for that recommendation.
Makes sense for maybe a media box or something you don't, or kids PC you don't want to have to dig
or
with
somebody switching from XP.
Exactly. Yes, that's a big one.
That's what I was thinking, And the thing that they have done, and I want to show it to you because it's something they've worked on a lot. So I've got Linux Mint installed here in a VirtualBox. I'm running the latest Cinnamon on my Arch machine. Been running that for the weekend, loving it. And then over here, I have got, I don't remember what I said as my VM password. Over here, I've got the latest Linux Mint 17 Cinnamon desktop installed in a VirtualBox. That way we could just take a look.
Right.
So when you get it installed, so don't mind the dual menu bars because it's in a VM. But when you get it installed, you get the traditional welcome screen, but it's been refined a little bit. They link you right to the new features page, right to the hardware database. So you can check your hardware, all that stuff. I actually like this welcome screen quite a bit. But
they did a nice job with it.
I want to show you the Update Manager because this is where they've spent a lot of their time. So the Update Manager at first glance looks about the same.
It does. It still has the numbering system, which has been...
the different levels.
You run hot or cold on it, depending on who you are.
So now the Update Manager shows more information. It does look a little better, too, and it gets less in your way. It no longer needs to reload itself in root mode once you click on it, which is nice.
That is nice.
It no longer checks for an internet connection or waits for the network manager, and it no longer locks the apt cache when you launch it.
That's awesome.
The UI was improved and the icons were modified. But if you look here, Matt, there's a new type of column that was added to differentiate between traditional updates and security updates. You see this exclamation mark right here?
Oh, they did address the security
And then you
stuff.
see that down arrow? That indicates traditional update versus an exclamation mark as a security update. So you get an idea when you go through, and then look, if we go all the way down here to the bottom, you've got the Linux kernels with an exclamation mark and a number 5. So they're not checked by default still.
Yeah, because this is the big thing with Linux Mint, and some people love it, some people hate it, in that, unlike, say, Ubuntu, you can actually decide whether or not you want a package that could potentially bork your system to be installed.
I mean,
but they could also be important packages, so it's kind of a wash.
I know as Linux nerds, that makes us cringe.
Yeah.
But, you know, years ago when we were brainstorming, like if we were going to build our own distro, this came up, and the consensus was this causes so many breakages that if you could have a Linux distribution where the user land moves but the kernel stays fairly locked in place, that might be ideal depending on the security issue. Now, what's great is some security issues can bypass sort of this filter now, which is great. By default, you know, these are unchecked. But you can go in here and you can, if you go into, right here, preferences, you check this box, and it'll start applying them.
Well, so if I was to put a Mint box on or put a Mint install on my mom's computer, for example, I would probably set it up like this, knowing that the 4s and 5s are something I'm going to install for her on a bi-weekly basis or whatever it is.
Nailed it.
Then I'm in charge of those because I can handle anything that come up. But otherwise, she can do regular updates on her system. I don't have to worry about it. She gets the latest Firefox, whatever.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
This was what makes Mint a great option to leave it with somebody who's switching and then not have to worry about, hey, you know, all of a sudden my my desktop logs in and it gets this classic, like, weird-looking older version, and it turns out, oh, yeah, well, your 3D acceleration isn't working. Or something like that. So anyways, I'm continuing to play with Cinnamon. I might do, I might share some more thoughts on Mint 7 after I've used it for a couple of days in Linux Unplugged on Tuesday. So we might talk about that, but it's a pretty great looking release, and I'm really enjoying using Cinnamon itself on my Archbox again.
Yeah, I actually have an article that's set to be posted probably early in the week that talks a little bit about, you know, Linux Mint versus Ubuntu versus other, basically the customizations versus, you know, Ubuntu proper and what some of the advantages and disadvantages are.
Boy, Nemo's looking good, too.
Yeah, Nemo really, that's one of those areas where they really nailed it. It's just like, wow.
I mean, Nemo's like, it's got like some of the improvements that I like in newer Nautilus or Files, but still very accessible in terms of power user features, like getting right to the URL bar there.
Pull crap down.
And I like this side thing here where it shows you the free space on your different mounted volumes. I mean, this is a really good looking file manager, and I've been using it, and I was telling Rikai over the weekend that to me, Nemo seems to strike a balance between Dolphin and Files. It's not as watered down as Files, but it's not over complicated like Dolphin. Not that Dolphin's too complicated, but
for some people that may have more features than what they're looking for.
The menu itself feels snappier too, so I think they removed that delay. I mean, overall, super solid release that I've been able to tell so far. I'm going to continue to punish Mint 17 and let you know if any cracks show up.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm giving it a thumbs up.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good looking release.
It looks like they did some nice things. I still have some concerns with Mint versus, say, Ubuntu, just based on the fact that you find entirely too often that, you know, PPAs, for example, can be hit and miss. I've experienced.
But you know, one of the things that's nice about Mint now is they have this built-in PPA management system where they give you a GUI to, you know, test PPAs and pull bad PPAs and add.
And I wish Ubuntu actually did add that. I think it's a must-have if you're going to use PPAs at all, because being able to test them is kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, really, they should just rip off. If this is open code, they should grab it, because I tell you what, I like the way Mint's doing it, and they ship it. So this is their software manager, software sources manager, and I think it's infinitely better.
It's easier to use.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question. I mean, that's the rub. Really is.
That's the rub. And if you become a big PPA user, you'll appreciate that PPA repository. So the new versions of Mate and Cinnamon are out, you guys.
Yes.
So go grab them. Don't be a fool. And
Don't be a fool.
I have links in the show notes.
Yeesh.
Okay. So are you familiar with Jimmy Kimmel at all?
Yes.
And
dating back to the Man Show.
Yeah, going back to the Man Show, exactly. Linux Today, Linux.com, working with Linus, decided to kind of pull a page from the Jimmy Kimmel show where, he sort of reads, Jimmy Kimmel would read mean tweets. So they have Linus read mean tweets.
That's awesome.
We'll debate how mean they are, but here, let's play it for a second, and then we'll talk about it.
AGM tweets, Linus Torvalds is angry. Programmers are angry people. You know what, AGM? Some of the people I work with, you'd be angry too. Ryan Block tweets, Linus Torvalds' crowning achievement, Linux or Git debate. Why do I have to have just one crowning achievement?
Nice.
I can do both. Pike tweets, apparently Linux dual booting exists because Linus Torvalds wanted to play Prince of Persia on DOS. Pike, not anymore. We've got Steam on Linux now.
What do you think, Matt?
Well done. I mean, it was family friendly, so I mean, you could watch it with the kids in the room and not be worried about it. But at the same time, it was actually quite hysterical. I think they should do more of those.
I'll link to the the Linux Foundation's YouTube channel if you guys want to check it out. They put this video together with Linus. What do you think? This is the new warm and friendly Linus, where he's like chatting with us and making fun of stuff. And
I like it because he's still got a little sting in there. He's still I'm with you. All right. Well, our last story in the news doc is just a bit of a good news. This is kind of a fun one. LeadWorks, I guess that's how you say it? LeadWorks? I think it's LeadWorks.
LeadWorks, yeah. The company today announced, or actually this is like yesterday or the day before, announced that the engine tools are available in the Ubuntu Software Center and that LeadWorks now plans to focus on Ubuntu, not Windows, as its primary target platform for its game engine. So this is, it's not just an engine. That's not the right word to put it. It's a full-on game creation suite of tools. Like here's some screenshots for you. So you can see you can create the 3D environments in this tool. And this is going to be available as a full set of tools to create games for Linux under Linux.
Nice.
Which is really nice. And it's available for purchase on Steam. Now, I only see it's $100 on Steam, but I only see it available for Windows, so I guess they'll add the Linux.
It's probably, sometimes there's probably some caching thing or whatever.
Well, I'm not sure if it's just ready yet, but they did about a year ago a Kickstarter to fund the port to Linux. Right. And at the time they did that Kickstarter, it was like, we want to target Linux, that way people can make games for Linux and stuff. And now they're all like, I think we're going to just go all in on Linux, so look forward to that. Which is a really cool way where crowdfunding kind of turns out to sort of enable a huge port like that in the future. Now, I've never obviously not a game developer, but I'm looking at this. I'm looking like a good game engine, and I watched some demo videos over the weekend, and I gotta say, I liked what I saw. So it's pretty exciting to see some new game technology coming to Linux.
Definitely.
And we also have that to compete with the Unreal Engine coming soon. And
more competition in the Linux space is a good thing.
Holy moly, Matt! It's getting crazy out there.
Crazy.
All right, Matt. That's all the news for this week. We're about to talk with Brandon from the CoreOS project, a project I'm extremely excited about. But first, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System 76, creators of machines born to run Linux. And they got a great sale going on right now, so go over to System 76 and check them out. I did want to make a couple of recommendations. First and foremost, I think you got to check out the Gazelle Professional.
I agree.
This is a machine where you get a great screen in a really nice form factor. But the other one that's really popular amongst our audience is the Kudu. The Kudu Professional is a 17.3-inch display. It's got a lot of fans in our chat room that are using it right now. There's a lot of great machines, and the great thing about these, the best thing about these, they have massive storage options. They have all Linux-compatible hardware, and you really get an out-of-box experience that works the way you would expect. Stop fighting your hardware and go play with your Linux. Go to system76.com. Tell them the Linux Action Show sent you, won't you? They have some great stuff over there. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. All right, well, joining us on the show this week is Brandon Phillips, the CTO at CoreOS. Hey, Brandon, welcome to the Linux Action Show.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, so I'm really excited about CoreOS. That's why I'm kind of really happy we got a chance to talk this morning, because I'll tell you, when I first read about CoreOS, it took me a little bit to get my brain wrapped around what it is and what its long-term potential could be. Before we get into that, though, is it true that you worked at SUSE for about 4 years?
Yeah, so I was at on the kernel team at SUSE, and I was working along with Greg Kohartman and a lot of other kernel developers to maintain and create new features for the Linux kernel.
Very nice. So you've got some experience. In fact, you've been working, and then you spent some time at IBM and Rackspace. So you have at CoreOS quite a team assembled. So I wanted to talk to you. There's a couple of details, a couple of questions I wanted to start with you, and then I thought maybe we could dig into CoreOS itself. The first thing is I kind of like to hear about the motivation, the reason you guys started the project. Why CoreOS? I mean, we have OpenStack, we've got Google's platforms out there. Why do we need CoreOS?
Sure. So when we started the project, the main thing that we were looking to do was trying to figure out how we can solve this problem of these Linux servers that sit out on the internet and never end up getting updated.
Yes. And
this is a big problem. We had an article that came out, forget who it was, I think it was Wired, that covered all these, they called them the slum lords of the internet, like all these machines that just sit out there and never get updated. And so we looked at how the browsers are doing updates today, where they're automatically updating. And these automatically updating browsers that were first pushed out by the Google Chrome team and then subsequently through Internet Explorer and Firefox, they brought about a huge amount of security on the front-end internet, but on the back-end internet, we haven't had that yet. And so how do you automatically update a server is a big question. And we, as we started going along and designing operating system that did this, we had a number of design requirements. And one of them is we ended up building something like Google's Chubby, which is a consistent data store. We have our tool called etcd. And then another design requirement were containers. And around the same time that we were starting the CoreOS project, the Docker project started too. So originally we had this idea that we'd have this really small operating system and then put user space in Linux containers. And then we, around the same time, got to know the Docker team. And we had known the people at .cloud before, so it was just very good timing.
And something I wanted to kind of clear up ahead of time, while we're towards the top of the chat here, is I have read a lot that CoreOS is based on Chrome OS. Could you talk a little bit about that and why that is?
Sure. So what we share with Chrome OS was we originally forked their SDK. And the reason we did that is because you need essentially a build system that can take all these various projects that you need to build a bootable Linux system and outputs a operating system image. And the Chrome OS team had done a pretty nice job of creating that pipeline in a self-contained chroot. And so we started there, and since then we've forked pretty heavily the SDK, but we still use a lot of those parts to actually build the operating system. Besides that, we don't really share much infrastructure at all. We use systemd instead of Upstart, and the Linux operating system looks quite a bit different. The other piece that we do share, and this is shared with a lot of various embedded technologies, is we use the concept of a double buffered update. So we actually have two Linux operating systems installed, two versions of CoreOS. And the A version, so you have an A and B partition, and the A version is running, we're updating the B in the background, and when you reboot, you get the B version, and if it successfully reboots, then that's the copy that'll run, and we'll start overwriting the A version with a new update.
So that sounds like a built-in safety net for a automatically updating server operating system, because worst case, if the update doesn't go right, you just boot from the previously good configuration.
Right, exactly. And our success metric is whether it's able to talk to the update service again, whether it's able to successfully say, hey, I updated, and get a 200 HTTP response
So it
back.
self-sanity checks, and then if it fails its self-check, it automatically boots into the last known good configuration?
Yeah, it depends on the platform, because some platforms you may have wedged and you can't automatically reboot.
Yeah. Before we go too much further, I mean, how, I know there's major differences, but how would, for a typical Linux server administrator, on the surface, how would CoreOS as an installation differ from a typical Linux installation? Is it an ISO that I can burn to a disk and install on any server, or is it something I deploy directly into virtualization? And if I install it, is it a familiar environment, or is it going to look like something completely different to me?
The environment's very familiar. So you have SSH. We put SSH keys on the machine that you provide either through your Pixie server or at install time or via your virtual machine provider, whether it be Amazon or Google or Rackspace. So the environment's very familiar. We do provide tools that automatically build up the cluster, and we have some built-in tools that allow you to build a resilient system against the system going down, which everyone wants, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone wants a server that, you lose one of the servers and the application you're running continues to move forward and make forward progress. That
was one of my questions is, does, and you might have started touching on it earlier, does CoreOS sort of assume a shared central storage to operate like that, or is it doing something on the back end to make that kind of magically happen? Say, I have a node, that node goes down, and I want another node to pick up that work task, but the data is maybe in a container on that specific node. What happens in that scenario?
Yeah, so we don't do anything magical there. What in a lot of cases we rely on are applications that are built for this environment. Okay. So we're not going to tell you to move your Oracle database to containers on CoreOS. Right. You want to use things that are resilient to that. So Cassandra, RethinkDB, sure. MongoDB, these sorts of things that have built-in replication.
Right. So, and that's probably the most practical approach is write the application for the environment too. Mm-hmm. And one of the topics we've covered a lot on this show is systemd. Could you talk a little bit about how systemd plays a part in CoreOS?
Sure. So with systemd, the thing that you get that's sort of new and novel over the existing init systems is that we have a API-driven init system. And this means that you're not having to write scripts around the init system. You can actually talk to an API and get results back, schedule jobs to be ran.
Is this etcd?
So we have a tool called Fleet.
Oh, Fleet, yeah.
It uses etcd as the back end to decide where jobs get run. So you have a 3-node cluster. You put some work into the cluster. It decides node 2 gets the job. And then that job gets pulled out of etcd and put into systemd via an API. So these jobs, and if that node 2 goes down, we detect that and we move it to another node, so node 1.
Fleet is sort of the cluster orchestrator, and etcd is essentially the shared configuration management amongst the nodes?
Right, exactly. So you need sort of this consistent data store, and that's what etcd is, because you need to be able to say in an atomic manner, this job goes to node 2. Mm-hmm. And you can't have somebody saying this job goes to node 2 and somebody else saying it going to node 1.
So does etcd look like /etc to these systems?
It doesn't look like /etc, so we don't bind mount it to /etc.
Okay.
But you can think of it as an etc for your cluster.
That's amazing. We have links to more information about that in the show notes too. It's etcd and the cluster orchestration with Fleet. That's brand new, right? Or fairly new? Isn't Fleet fairly new for you guys?
Yeah. So Fleet's been something we've been working on for probably the last 5-6 months.
It looks really neat. And by the way, great work on the CoreOS website too. I want to shift gears and put my sysadmin hat back on, and I'm really trying to picture a scenario where somebody comes to me and says, Chris, we need to get Nginx installed on the cluster today. When I'm using a CoreOS installation, is the process of installing software familiar, almost like an apt-get install Nginx, but instead it's deployed within a Docker container, or is it something wholly different? What's the process like for deploying typical server applications?
Sure. So everything goes into a container. So if you have a Docker container for Nginx, then you deploy the Docker container, and that's just the process that you go through. If you have a tarball of your software, then you deploy it with nspawn. So we don't have an apt-get or RPM on CoreOS, and the reason we did that is because we wanted to kind of redraw the line of where a Linux distro is. Up until now, the Linux distro has been sort of this snapshot of all open source that happened at one period of time, and then updates get applied to it. And we're trying to draw that line so it's as small as possible that we can support an update, and then let the user make the decisions. Because I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience running a server. You install, the latest CentOS, and then next thing you know, your application needs, Python 2.8, Python 3.
Yes.
And it's just not available. And so you go through all this process, and you end up with a machine that looks nothing like what you originally installed.
Right, and you've got repos just smashed in there, and it's a mess. So I mean, that's an incredible problem to solve with CoreOS. In all honesty, is CoreOS competition for things like OpenStack? Is it an alternative? Is it? I mean, in a way, it seems like what you're doing is you are creating something that could be an enterprise-grade, like I'm talking Google scale-sized infrastructure that's just available for anybody to download. That, to me, seems like you guys are treading on some pretty protected territories. Am I right?
So on the fact of OpenStack, we run on top of OpenStack.
Okay.
You think of OpenStack as a way of managing machines, and we run on top of regular bare metal machines, virtual machines, that sort of stuff. As far as where we're going with CoreOS, I think that we haven't really had this available before to sysadmins. A lot of companies have sort of built this thing like CoreOS internally. You see a lot of the large companies, whether they be Google or Amazon or E-Trade, they build their own operating system internally that looks very much like this. And so all we're trying to do is take these well-trodden paths from these really big companies and make it available in a way that anyone can use. Well,
I gather the response is going well, because I just read on May 23rd that CoreOS images are now available on the Google Compute Engine. That seems like a big win for you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really great working with the Google Compute guys. They've put together a really awesome product, and it's been a good relationship so far. And
I also noted that recently CoreOS joined the Linux Foundation as well. So you guys are really, the month of May is a big month for CoreOS. So where's CoreOS going next? What's next for the project?
So the next big milestones is we're continuing to work on our beta release. And we have these various channels. We have an alpha channel and a beta channel. And obviously, the next thing we want to do is launch that stable channel. And that's a big focus for us at the moment. It almost
sounds like a rolling OS for servers that's not quite that. Like, it almost sounds like the perfect balance of bringing some of the benefits of rolling with the safety net of a dual boot and operating system and containers to isolate the applications from underlying changes. The only thing I would be worried about is how is there a CoreOS wide way to keep all of my application containers also up to date when I want, or is that each container has to be individually managed, like with maybe like something like Puppet, or how does that work in CoreOS?
Sure. So when you start to think about containers, you have to think about software a little bit differently, because you want to do deploys in a way that you have a version that's currently deployed, and then you move traffic to the next version of the software. And so we don't have anything that helps you today, but it's definitely something that we'll be moving towards.
Very good. I have one kind of last question that I think it's tangentially related to CoreOS. You recently, on Linux.com, wrote about how ButterFS could have a lot of great features coming for both servers, but specifically for Docker containers. Could you talk a little bit about some of the things we could be seeing in ButterFS that might accelerate container usage on Linux?
Yeah, so ButterFS already has a really great snapshot process that is used for Docker containers today. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about seeing in ButterFS is a way of cryptographically verifying the state of the bits on disk. So right now, ButterFS does CRC hashes on all of the trees, which is great because you're able to verify that something isn't corrupted, but you're not able to verify, is that exactly the same bits that I put down originally? And so moving forward, I think being able to verify cryptographically is going to be a huge thing, because you can say, make sure across all my servers that I'm actually running the software I think I'm running, because it's the bits that I'm getting off disk.
Very interesting. It seems like an extremely exciting time for CoreOS and just Linux in the server space in general. A lot of really cool technologies, some of which you guys are working on, some of which the community is working on, like Docker and ButterFS, are kind of all coming together. Brandon, is there anything else you want to touch on about CoreOS before we run?
No, I just want to make it clear that it's really easy to get started with CoreOS. You can run it on Vagrant or AWS or Google Compute Engine. So if you want to try out a CoreOS cluster, it's super approachable.
Very good. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes, and also we'll have links to Brandon's Twitter profile. You can find him at twitter.com/@BrandonPhillips, and follow his adventures and pictures of him and his bearded buddies on Twitter @BrandonPhillips. Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the Linux Action Show and telling us all about CoreOS. I can't wait to see where the project goes.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the time.
Thanks.
And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But Matt, we got a few follow-up items to cover and an announcement to cover before we get out of here. First of all, today, well, actually, it was a couple of days ago. I think it was like Tuesday of this week, marked 1 year that you and I started the Arch Challenge. It was the day I published day one of switching to Arch videos. And I can't believe it's been a year.
I know, it doesn't feel like it because it's been relatively uneventful for the most part.
And to be totally honest with you, a lot of the ways that I sort of have a perception of time is by how many reloads I do of my computer in a year.
Right.
And so I usually get a good three to four reloads in every year. Maybe sometimes it goes up to as many as a dozen. I'm still on the original install since that Arch Challenge, which blows my mind.
I know.
Now, that said,
that's it.
Here we are, a year into running Arch, and just in this last week, both Matt and I have hit some snags.
Yeah. So here's the thing. On the machines that I update on a regular basis, I couldn't be happier, especially desktop machines. No, I really had historically no issues. Where I run into issues is maybe I have like an old netbook, for example, that I haven't updated since time began, and so I need to do a clean install.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not really paying a lot of attention. I got to just pave it and redo. Okay, that's no big deal because it was so far gone. There's no way. Do a clean install. Hey, new kernel. Cool. Atheros chipset. Awesome. Oh, hey, yeah, you know that whole working thing you liked? We're going to throw that out the door. Now, to be fair, it's a minor thing. You know this, wireless bugs happen, whatever. And I have a little dongle doohickey here that is going to serve the...
I don't know, Matt. You know what I say.
Get it out of here.
Yeah, so, it's not the end of the world. But that wasn't all of it. No.
Oh, no?
There were some GNOME issues.
Oh, no.
So, historically, when there's GNOME updates, sometimes extensions take a little bit to get caught up. Sometimes it takes a little extra time. You got to wait for that. I don't want to wait for that.
Well, but don't you think, if you would upgraded from Ubuntu 13.10 to 14.04, that might have happened
and
too?
it could happen on any distro, but it's one of those things to where on the non-rolling release distros, I get to be lazy.
You get more time.
Oh, yeah, and I do. I always wait till last minute because I don't care.
Sure.
That's just how I was. Because
it works for you.
Yeah, and I wasn't really getting any benefit with the latest Ubuntu per se, so I'd just sit on it forever. But with a rolling release, I enjoyed the latest packages. That being said, with some minor annoyances, call them paper cuts if you will. The problem is I enjoy using Arch too darn much to really do anything about it.
Can't go anything else.
Right.
Can't switch.
And it's pissing me off because it bugs me, but it just kind of makes me think, this is something to remember.
So I got a little story for you. Here's my Arch story. So I got the Bonobes here running the OG install from the Arch Challenge, and then Linux Fest came along back in April, and the whole studio move and System 76 was really kind and sent me an Ultra Pro to review for a little while, and I ran about 3 weeks before Ubuntu 14.04 came out to about 2 weeks after, and then a couple of more weeks because I needed this for Skype. I ran the Ultra Pro, and I didn't update my Bonobo for about 2 to 3 months.
Right.
And I was really curious what would happen. And I did an update, and there were basically every single package needed an update. Everything from, my shell, literally the fish shell, all the way to the kernel and every Cinnamon, every KDE package, every GNOME package, every Pantheon package, all of it, right?
Yeah. Especially when you get multiple desktop environments, that can get a little much.
So I did this huge update, huge update. And everything went really great. In fact, it went so well, I was like, I cannot believe I just essentially triple upgraded my operating system. And I have one problem, and I ran into it once before on Arch, and it's a KDE issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I suspect it's a conflict between an NVIDIA driver update and the KWin, specifically if you have the GL version of KWin, instead of using XRander for your CPU, but you're using the GPU to accelerate KWin, it seems to be from time to time after an NVIDIA update, KDE just does not log in. I've tried clearing all my KDE caches. I've removed my .kde directories.
Yeah.
I've even reloaded the KDE meta packages to just reinstall the entire KDE desktop.
Wow.
KDE logs in
just
and it
purged everything there.
It comes right up to that start screen, you know, that KDE start screen. I get one icon and then it never moves on. And now I can't use KDE. Every other desktop's working fine. In fact, Cinnamon working great.
Right.
So it's not like critical, and I'm not a primary KDE user, but it's a little bit of a bummer. That said, I've got almost every desktop environment installed that's ever been created. And for only one of them to have an issue after not updating for almost 3 months on an over a year-old install, and in my experience, this happened once before with KDE, and about 2 to 3 weeks later, NVIDIA released an update, or somebody released an update, and the problem solved itself. I didn't even have to do anything. So it might happen again with an update. I'm with you. Yeah. Not only can I not see myself switching to anything else.
I just can't. Yeah, I can't. I mean, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen? I'm going to go to the LTS kernel. Yeah. I'm going to solve the problem. It's going to be fine. It's just one of those things I haven't had time to dick with yet.
Yeah, so, you could swap out to the LTS kernel.
And that's what I'll end up doing because I want the other packages. I don't want the latest kernel.
I got to tell you, though, I got more Arch than I mean, a year on, I got Arch right there. I got an Arch machine over there. So there's 2 Arch machines plus my machine in the studio. 3 Arch machines in this room. In our virtual environment, we've got I think 2, maybe 3 Arch VMs. Right. I've got an Arch machine upstairs. I've got an Arch machine, and I mean, Arch is all over the place now. And you know, there was a question in our subreddit. They said, "Well, what's the difference really when you really gets down to it? What's the difference between doing a command line install of Debian testing and Arch?" And at the end of the day, for me on this show, it's .AUR.
Yeah. See, for me, that's what keeps me here. Is I don't care about the Arch vision or the wearing robes and singing Kumbaya in circles or any of that other crap. I like the packages. I'm all about the software. I'm all about the fact I don't have to continuously reinstall my operating system. Those are the 2 things I care about. Yeah. And so that's what keeps me here. The idealism, I don't give it 2 minutes.
I'm all about the software. And the other thing I like about Arch is I think it's cute when like people will joke, oh, it's hard to run things on Arch. And then I see like new games come out for Steam that don't work on different distros, but they always work on Arch. I think that's cute. Yeah. But the thing about what I really like about Arch at the end of the day is there is, as far as I can perceive it a year in, 0 actual distro politics. I mean, sure, there's community politics going on. Every community that's of any substantial size has that.
Oh, yeah, they do. They do.
You can't avoid it. It's human nature.
Yeah. There's a and I certainly have experienced the superior mindset.
Yeah, the Arch user thing.
And there's no question Arch is superior in a lot of spaces, but at the same time, that doesn't mean it's for everybody.
So if you can get, but I guess what I'm saying is, if you can get over some of the community elitism, which is out there a little bit with Arch, more than it probably is with other distros, but all distros have them. The thing is, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't have to worry about the politics of the distribution maintainers themselves because
it doesn't affect your actual user experience.
There's
at
no
all.
like
it really
there's no convergence vision, or there's no like we have to have this respin where we can work on server and desktop and have all these different iterations, and there's no grand vision where you want to be like this massive corporate distribution that has an open version. True. It's a meta distribution. Here's the code from upstream. Here's some structure to tie it all together, and here's an awesome wiki to tell you how to set it all up, and it's essentially vanilla Linux, it's vanilla packages.
It really is,
and it's just set up what you need, and that keep it simple stupid philosophy that Arch follows is legit.
Yeah. And I would say that their documentation, with the exception of old school Gentoo back when their documentation was still intact, they have the best documentation I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Period.
Everybody refers to that.
And I mean, even if I like one day hated Arch and moved on, their documentation is really good.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can go in and do their power tweaks in 5 minutes because I can just copy and paste the crap and throw it in a terminal.
And I
love that. It's awesome.
Our editor, Rikai, long-time Arch user.
Yeah.
And I needed a box installed with Integros for last week's class, and I didn't have the time. I said, Rikai, would you mind installing Integros for me? And I gave him the USB thumbstick, and I said, depending on how this installer behaves, because it sometimes is hit and miss with the daily ISO, I said, this is either going to be the most elegant Linux installation you've ever seen, or it's going to be total crap.
Yeah.
And he installed it, didn't have any issues, and he came back. And, Rikai's a particular guy. He likes what he likes. And he said to me, that legitimately was the most smooth, refined Linux distribution I've ever installed and set up. And like when it was done, I had a full Arch system pointing at the Arch repos, and I'm done.
Yeah. It had all the stuff I care about. That's what I do. Is anytime I have a new system, I'll just drop the USB drive in, and I go have dinner. I'm done. I don't do anything.
So
it's great.
A year in, it's not perfect.
No, nothing is. Technology as a whole makes me want to scream.
Yeah.
So I mean, so that's a given.
Yes.
I
agree.
But it's one of those things that makes me scream less. I have more problems with my TV set than I do with my computer.
It's also kind of like one of the reasons I'm self-employed. It's like, okay, well, if I screw up and lose my job, that's on me. It's not on somebody else.
Right.
It's the same thing with Arch. Like if I screw up Arch, that's on me. That's not on because the distro did some sort of weird patch or did some sort of weird thing. No, it's on me, and I'm comfortable accepting that responsibility and resolving those problems. And I find it also to be the thing for me is it's just absolutely invaluable for doing this show.
Well, I think so. And I also think that like Ubuntu, it's got a user base to where you can find the solutions to your problems 99% of the time with a Google search.
Yeah.
Important thing to realize with both Ubuntu or Arch is if you're a Linux Mint guy, for example, don't go to the Ubuntu forums. It's not always going to be flush. Same thing with if you're running Manjaro, for example, don't go to the Arch forums. And I don't mean that because you're going to get flamed out of existence, which you will.
You will.
But more importantly, it's a fork. It's a different operating system. It's a different experience. You're better off going to the forums for that particular thing. So I think as long as you keep those things in mind, you'll have a good time.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's really all. I mean, people ask for our year updates. There you have it. Both of us are still pretty happy. We acknowledge there's some drawbacks.
There's some rough edges, but they're fixed.
What operating system doesn't have those?
Yeah, and it's a matter of, will Matt get off his can and fix it? It just depends.
Yeah.
All
right. I got an announcement to make before we go any further. You might have heard.
I heard.
Jupiter Broadcasting is working on some new shows. 2 of them, to be exact. And one of them launches on Monday. That's tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific. It'll be live over jblive.tv, noon Eastern. And that, my friends, brand new show, Tech Talk Today, hosted by myself and a rotating cast of friends, where we'll talk about the tech news, anything else you're interested in specifically, and more importantly, anything else I'm interested in. And we'll be daily Monday through Thursday. And the idea behind Tech Talk Today is to have a talk show platform where we have a sort of one feed for the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. So if something crazy great's happening, like, we're going to have a great interview with a CoreOS developer, you might hear about that in Tech Talk Today. If TechSnap does an incredible breakdown of the TrueCrypt situation, you might hear about that in Tech Talk Today. But on top of that, we'll talk about the current tech news issues and anything else in my mind. And I'm going to be honest, a daily show is a huge commitment, so I'm not absolutely positive it's going to work. It's sort of a big, grand experiment. Yeah. But the other thing we're tying in with Tech Talk Today is we're giving the audience a way to fund the Jupiter Broadcasting Network directly. Now, what we always try to do here at JB is strike a balance between spots from sponsors that we genuinely love and audience funding. And the traditional audience funding techniques have really sucked. I mean, it's like Chris finds a way to embed a PayPal button that looks like ass on the website, and then Angela puts it into a spreadsheet, and it's like this horrible, clunky system where you put your money into a black box, you hope the Jupiter Broadcasting is investing it properly. You have no idea what the state of our funding is. And to be honest with you, what often ends up happening, and this has happened especially in 2014, as we moved into a new studio, is the donations drop way, way off. And then I get in this weird, uncomfortable spot where I don't want to go on air and ask for money. And at the same time, I don't want to worry people. And so what we're doing is we're funding Tech Talk Today and the Jupiter Broadcasting Network on Patreon. Patreon is a funding platform where you can see exactly where our money is at. Right now, you can see Tech Talk Today is earning $3 per month.
Boy.
Not going to get us too far, but... No. In cumulative, we can eventually get some good, solid funding foundation for the Jupiter Broadcasting Network so we can really continue to strike a balance between advertising content and user-funded content, and maybe even sort of shift that balance more towards user-funded content. And I've laid out milestone goals that will be applicable to Tech Talk Today and the Jupiter Broadcasting Network as we reach different funding levels. We have some limited funding options available for swag and things like that. If you would like to support the Tech Talk Today show and future projects of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network and give us a good, stable funding foundation, patreon.com/today. You can make a pledge of any dollar amount. There are some higher dollar amount pledges where you get special rewards. We'll be working on that more. So you can go to patreon.com/today to support Tech Talk Today and the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. So we will have other shows that are funded via Patreon. Not a lot. We're going to have... Like I said, we're going to try to strike a balance between traditional sponsor funding and audience funding. So we're going to have some shows that are Patreon funded, and we're going to have some shows that are sponsor funded and some that are mixed. So that way we as a business model, the idea is if any one particular funding source were to dry up, the Jupiter Broadcasting Network doesn't go off the air. Maybe a sponsor relationship ends. Maybe Patreon shuts down.
Right.
Maybe PayPal closes our account, or Amazon screws us like they did last year.
Yeah.
You know, this is also a part to sort of recover from that Amazon loss. We are still dealing with that. And what I realized is, like any good tech startup, any internet startup, if you are reliant on one single source of funding, that is eventually going to spell doom. It is just the internet changes so fast. It is a reality of being an internet business. So what Patreon is going to allow us to do is, instead of ramping up sponsors, and trust me when I say it has taken an incredible amount of self-control to keep the sponsors at the level we have, because there's a lot of people that are very interested in sponsoring some of these shows. But I think being answer-tainable to the audience for a show like ours, for all of our shows, is really the best route. So if you want to support the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, if you want to keep Tech Talk Today going every single Monday through Thursday, go to patreon.com/today and help us fund this crazy arse endeavor.
Yeesh.
You never know. I mean, you can read through the milestones. We have some really fun plans depending on where funding goes.
Looks like there was a barbecue one in there somewhere. You know?
You got a quick eye, Matt. You got a quick eye. There is a barbecue one in there. And we'll also have some exclusive content for those who support our Patreon. So what we're going to do, some shows will have Patreon funding.
Nice.
But if you want to just support the network, if you love all of the content on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, and you also want to sort of give us stable footing to branch out and try new things, patreon.com/today. It's a general Jupiter Broadcasting fund, and as a thank you, Monday through Thursday, I'll be doing Tech Talk Today with a rotating cast of characters, and from time to time, some fun retro look-backs at technology and other things. So Tech Talk Today starts on Monday, and patreon.com/today is open right now if you want to support the network and the Tech Talk Today show.
Good stuff. So that's not just only for the show, as you're saying. You're actually telling me that this is a great way to support the entire network.
You got it, Matt. You got it.
Stuff.
It's like science.
Science. Boy, I'm still working on that one.
Patreon.com/today. I got today, too, which I'm pretty happy with. So watch for our first broadcast tomorrow at jblive.tv, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And then, of course, it should be out for download for just about everybody's commute, at least on this side of the pond in the afternoon, and it'll be available in the evenings for those of you on the other side of the pond.
Come for the content, stay for the shorts.
And one last little tease that's coming up. One of our producers, Mr. Q5Sys, got his hands on a brand new spanking Yolophone. Look at this. Look at a nice box.
Ooh, that's cool.
So he did a little unboxing for us. So look at that. Look at that. That is slick.
Yeah.
So we'll probably have more information about this very soon. It's in his hot little hands right now. He took these this morning before the show went on the air.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I love the design. Someone who really knows what they're doing.
Now, Matt.
Yes.
Didn't I hear that you might have some articles coming up that I might be interested in?
I do. It's not up yet, but if you go to datamation.com and scroll down to open source, you will say probably either Monday or Tuesday find some new content there. Although, if you want to go there now and check out some of the retro content, that is there as well.
You got some good stuff. Why I switched to GNOME, is desktop Linux secure? My top Linux frustrations of 2014. I liked that one. Yep, so that's at datamation.com. Find the open source section, or just follow the link. Go to all of Matt's articles. We have that linked in the show notes. But that's not all you're up to.
That's not all. We actually did a part 2 to our latest gaming experience with BattleBlock Theater.
Yeah,
and
buddy.
I got to tell you, we are really, really enjoying it.
BattleBlock Theater is one of these games where you just want to meet the developers and buy them a beer because they just had so much fun making this, and it comes through the game.
And it really appeals to our sense of juvenile humor.
Yes.
So it really hits the nail on the head there, because it just allows us just to open right up.
Yes, so. I will admit to that as well. So you guys can find that at youtube.com/geek and the gamer. Yeesh. Especially if you want to hear Matt do a little cussing.
That's right. I'm there for the...
We keep it friendly.
Come for the game and stay for the swearing.
We keep it friendly, fammy.
Fammy. Yeah, we're fammy. And that's where I basically unload all my week's stuff.
Yeah, you hold all the swearing in on this show, and then you go home and record Geek and the Gamer, and just boom.
If you ever wanted to know what I'm like at home, there you go.
Does that also mean you don't have pants on when you record?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Last but not least, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. Yes. That is the official Reddit, where you can see I have 9,383 unread Reddit messages.
Wow. At that point, it's kind of like, screw it.
Not going to get to those.
No.
But it is a great way to give us feedback. If you submit an article, the community will vote it up and comment on it. And that that trickles into the show. It really does help form our show, gives us an idea of what our community is interested in. It's also the best way to get a hold of us. I got to tell you, starting a thread over there is the way to do it. So linuxactionshow.reddit.com. And of course, we'd love to have you email us. Just go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click the contact link, choose Linux Action Show from the drop down, and let us know your thoughts. And also join us on Tuesday for Linux Unplugged. It is your weekly Linux talk show where Matt and I join our virtual Linux lug on the Mumble Room, and we chat about the topics of the day, and I suspect Mint might be one of them.
Yes, I think Mint is going to be one of them.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. There's some things you see come along as a server admin, and you're like, oh my god, that solves so many years. Like, I literally cumulatively spent years solving that problem. Like, what he was talking about when he was talking about the whole Python situation with CentOS. Dude, when I use CentOS, that is my life. Like, what he was talking about has frustrated me to no end. It's funny, man. There's stuff that's coming along now that I look at and I go, I might not have burned out on the whole sysadmin thing. Like, Docker and CoreOS, like, I might not have burned out if these things had been around back when I was doing it. I think I literally survived the worst decades of being a sysadmin when, like, the internet was brand new and Linux was brand new and PHP and MySQL and Apache were all brand new. I lived through all of that, and now here we are after it, and now all these other guys coming up, like,
it's all easy street.
They get CoreOS, they get Docker, they get Arch. I mean, screw you guys with your Arch and your AUR bastards. I went through fire, the trials of hell. This is no joke. Did you know there is a drone communications network called Skynet?
Yeah. It's just so wrong on so many levels.
They named it Skynet.
It's like, what, T-Rex? Why would you do that?
Why are you doing that?
Inviting trouble. I mean, do we really want Sarah Connor running around shooting everything?
It's not even a joke.
Terminator?
It's literally a network so the drones can communicate with each other. How freaky is that?
Well, it's kind of tempting fate. It's kind of like you're kind of being a D-bag at that
I agree.
point. Why
would you do that?
Yeah,
you're condemning humanity.
Yeah.
Condemning. It's actually not the military drones. It's a private drone thingy.
Oh,
it's like for commercial drones to speak to each other.
So it'll charge you as an offshoot.
Which, let's be honest. When the revolt begins from the machines, it'll probably start with the commercial stuff, right? Because there won't be, like, the businesses, right?
Yeah, right.